Hello and welcome to Before They Knew Better, the podcast from DIY Magazine. My name is Lisa Wright. This is my co-host and producer, Giles Bidder.
Hello.
Today on the podcast, we have the one and only Howlin, Pelle, Almqvist from the Hives. Yeah. He is a rock legend, Swedish rock royalty, and a punk through and through, as you will see by his hilarious anecdotes that occurred when we asked him, as we ask all of our guests on Before They Knew Better, to bring in one song, one photo, and one object that relates to hilarious, wonderful stories from their youth. Pelle to his friends, Howlin Pelle to his adoring fans, of which there are many, had some excellent stories about being a young punk in Sweden. And also, he will be bringing this sort of top A-grade banter to the stages of the UK throughout March and April when the Hives are on tour. And if you wanted to be in the Hives, and frankly, doesn't everyone always want to be in the Hives, why not sign up for the Hives franchise rock show? They are encouraging fans to create their own Hives covers bands. But until we all do that, while you're waiting, getting some inspiration, why not carry on and listen to this new episode of Before They Knew Better with DIY Magazine and Howlin Pelle Almqvist. I feel like there's been a sort of like a renaissance of sorts. Does it feel that way from inside Hives HQ?
A resurgence. Yes, it does, actually.
Good.
I mean, a given is that we put out the first album in a decade. I mean, that would do that, make that feel like that.
Yeah,
because it's been such a long time. But but it's also been so unbelievably well received. Not unbelievably because it's good, but the fact that people actually notice, you know, there's a lot going on with the internet.
Yes, heard of it.
So, you know, the fact that people were able to focus on the fact that we released an album is pretty amazing to me.
Yeah, I mean, like, it's strange though with you guys, because I feel like even though, like, it surprised me when I read that it had been a decade, because I feel like I've been sort of watching you play at festivals pretty consistently throughout that time.
Yeah, we have. We never really stopped playing. Like, we just kind of like, we get a lot of mileage out of those songs.
Do you ever get fed up of being like, oh God, I've got to do Tick Tick Boom again? Or like, does it still feel exciting when you're...
I mean, if it's exciting, if I'm not excited, just look at the crowd or go nuts and then it feels good again. Like, that's the thing with like the big songs is that I play them so much that I don't have to focus while doing it. I can just kind of enjoy the moment, and then people love them so much that I kind of get drawn into that energy. So that's all right. But it does feel wrong to not have new songs. Yeah. It's weird. Like, time gets elastic. You feel like you don't know what year it is. And there's nothing grounding you at all. Like, I feel like I'm eternal. And also, like, am I living for a second or 1,000 years? I don't know. It's really messes with your sense of time.
Okay, well, I mean, nice to know that things haven't got too existential and mental over the last 10 years. You sound really, really grounded and good.
Well, now I can pull myself out of it now that we actually made a record. Now I feel like a normal, like, I exist again.
Excellent. Congratulations. That's a nice feeling for anyone to have.
On existing, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's lovely to exist, I think. But yeah, I mean, like Monkeys, you've obviously been mates with those guys for a while, right? Like, I feel like that's been a relationship between Hives and Monkeys that has been going on longer than this tour.
Yes. I mean, that's how kind of they got started, is they heard the Hives and the Strokes. They went to a Strokes show and the Hives on the same month, I think. And that's why they formed the Arctic Monkeys. So we were a very, like, definite early influence on them. And then we toured with them like 15 years ago in South America. And that's kind of when we became friends. And then we did this tour now.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think I love that band. I think they're amazing. It's like the only band that are that big that are good.
Wow. Okay.
And that's a hard combination to achieve. Well, you know, like AC/DC and Rolling Stones are amazing, but like, yeah, the only young band that play at that level that I like.
Emirates was special, wasn't it?
I mean, maybe they're even the only band of that kind of like in a younger age that are doing places that big.
Yeah, so maybe it's weird to think, actually, isn't it? Like, when you kind of think of those massive, because even bands like the Strokes, like, they wouldn't be able to sell out that sort of level show now, I don't think. Whereas,
well, it's also like it's the, you know, the British kind of protectionist loving your own thing.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
If the Strokes were from the UK, that would have been massive.
This is true. Is there a sense like when, yeah, like you say, you've toured with them 15 years ago, they've cited you as influences, like do you feel like a sort of older brother kind of relationship with them? Like how's the rapport?
Yeah, but more like it's more like if your younger brother became Beyonce. So yeah, it's complicated.
Yeah, okay.
We love them, but we're also a little envious of them.
Yeah, but you know what? Solange has got a great career as well, so there's room for both in this world.
Yes.
Yeah.
We are the Solange to their Beyonce. Not really.
Yeah, but you know, Solange with like
I think we're more like the Destiny's Child to their Beyonce.
Yeah.
I also think this we're at the end of this reasoning now. I don't know where to go.
You go wild on stage, and I'm sure you've spoken about it 100 times only since it happened a few months ago, but smashing your head with a microphone by accident and then turning that into a t-shirt, and it's sort of like a meme kind of thing. That's
life gives you lemons, man.
Turn them into a t-shirt.
Yeah.
If life gives you lemons, make the lemons into a meme is the modern way. I mean, Christ, like that did. Like, were you okay? Like, did you feel like you were going to sort of black out then, or like what actually happened?
Well, there's so many doctors at the Arctic Monkeys show,
right?
I guess because if you have a stadium show that big, so like 40 doctors took care of me right at the show. I've never been so coddled in my life, which was nice. So it's the best treated little wound I on my body.
Okay.
And well, no, I just bled a lot, and I thought it looked kind of cool. Like, it didn't hurt beyond that. I mean, there was slight whiplash. My neck hurt a lot after that.
Okay. I remember...
Probably from reacting to getting the mic in my face. But.
Yeah, fair. I remember, I think I did a phoner with you ages ago, and you were talking about a time when you did a festival and you tried to jump around a corner of a stage and fell off and concussed yourself or something like that.
Yeah.
Does that ring bells? Or I guess it wouldn't ring bells because you were concussed, but...
Yeah, I don't remember that. No, I do remember it. I jumped. It's true that I tried to jump around a corner, and then I fell off stage, landed on my head, and passed out. But I didn't know I passed out because it was like, I just remember like the feeling of, that in Star Wars when they get out of hyperspace, that's what it felt like. I felt like zoom, and I was in reality again. And I was in reality because our guitar player, Vigilante Carlson, was shaking me by the shoulders, saying, "Are you okay?" Which, if I would have hurt my neck, would have been a very bad move.
Right.
But that's how I woke up. And then when I woke up, it's like, they're like, "Are you okay to finish the show?" And I said yes, and I finished the show. And then afterwards, there was a doctor that came up like, "So the security guard says you passed out. That means you've been concussed. And if you're concussed, you should avoid loud noises and bright lights."
Right, perfect. Yeah.
So I did like an hour of a rock and roll show after that in like full stroboscope, 1 million decibels.
Oh my God.
So then they strapped me to a stretcher and drove me down from the top of an Alp, which is where we were playing. And they put me in the Swiss hospital. It was in Switzerland. The Swiss hospital, which was like, they look like James Bond movies. That's like the most clinically clean, perfect hospital I've ever seen. And then there was a nurse whose name was Troll. She had a name tag that said Troll. And her job was to wake me up once every hour by flashing a flashlight into my eyes to see if they changed. So after that, I was like wrecked after that. It was the worst night of my life.
Right, okay.
Like, not because the concussion, but just being woken up by trolls once an hour.
Were you an accident-prone kid?
Not really, no. Like, and I feel like I've had 20 years of daredevil stunts, and those are the only two real altercations. So I feel like it's just like, it's the risk-reward ratio is still pretty good.
Yes. Even if not a daredevil, though.
I mean, Iggy Pop, like, man, he hurts himself all the time.
Yeah, what was that?
I'm doing better than him.
What's that story about Iggy Pop? Isn't there a story about him being flattened by a fridge once or something? Have I made that up?
I'm sure there's many.
Do you know?
He seemed very accident prone.
Yeah, but I guess, no risk.
Kind of part of the show.
No reward.
And he's Iggy Pop, so he wins.
when you were young, the show's about being young, even if you weren't like a sort of daredevil kid, I'm guessing, you know, started in bands or started playing instruments early, had the calling towards the rock and roll sort of lifestyle. Like, what can you remember, like, when you first heard either, like, you know, rock music, punk music, something that you kind of thought, like, hold on, this is what I need. This speaks to me.
This is for me. Yeah, I was 6 years old, and it was AC/DC's For Those About the Rock album on cassette from like an older kid down the street who's like 5 years older. And we got that cassette and we played it on a little tape recorder, me and my brother, and just thought it was the most exciting thing.
Yeah.
And I probably still do it to this day, actually. Then like there was like a lull of, I didn't think it was like, because they seem like superheroes. I didn't think that was possible to do. It's like being an astronaut or something. But then, like, I guess 6 years later, when I was like 12, I discovered punk music, and that seemed easy.
Yeah.
By comparison.
Yeah. I mean,
so that's kind of when we got into like making noise ourselves, I guess.
So the photo that you have brought in for us is a photo of you and your brother, looking very, I mean, how old do you reckon you are in this picture?
I don't know, 4 or 5, I don't know, what is it?
Yeah, it's a very cute picture of, I'm guessing, two people that then went on to have a lot of sort of less innocent rock and roll adventures. But at that point in your life, like, what were you like as a kid? Were you quite a sort of adventurous boy?
No, I was pretty quiet. I was like planning for the first 10 years of my life. Not really doing anything, just watching and learning. And then after that, I was fully formed. But yeah, there was definitely like, I was pretty passive on the surface. I tried every sport, didn't like any of them. Spent most of the time to myself, didn't talk a lot. And then all of a sudden I exploded into this extrovert character I am now. But there was very like on or off.
That's fun. I mean, what do you think sort of made the switch for you? I
think, if you want to call it that, finding my calling, like that I knew, like, oh, here's a thing I can do better than anyone else. Mm-hmm. And then that gave me the confidence to be who I felt like I needed to be. Like, I don't care if I can fix a car. I don't care if I'm good at painting. I don't care if I'm good at, doing my taxes or anything. Because I got this one thing that I do better than pretty much anyone. And that gives me the confidence to suck at everything else.
Yeah, I like that. I mean, like, was it a pretty sort of instantaneous realization? Like, whenever can you remember getting on stage for the first time?
Yeah, and I think that I was really nervous and stuff. But even when we were shit, we were very entertaining. I think that was always there. Like, even when, there were barely any songs or anything, but it was always like people were mesmerized by us on the stage, even if they didn't like the music. Like, we always had that kind of X factor, and I don't know why really, but I feel like that was there before we were like a good band or anything. Like, and like all the friends have said that, like, when, everyone would go see our show, regardless of if they liked us or didn't like us or hated us or whatever, because at least it was something,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you ever have any
It prompted some kind of reaction in everybody.
Yeah. I mean, like, did you have any sort of, because now I think, there are certain things that you do on stage. You've got like bits where you'll all freeze. There's obviously, getting everyone down and jumping. Like, I feel like there's certain sort of Hives tricks in the arsenal that are like, oh, okay, these are ways that we know the crowd are going to go mental. Like, what were you doing back in the day when you were first road testing how to be a frontman?
Man, I don't really remember. I mean, less of those things, but some of those things have always been there. But I guess it was always like the same. It was kind of the same character. Like, we even had like kind of a crisis because it's very like there's a lot of like bragging and like megalomania in the Hives stage show, and that was kind of there. It was like 9 people in the crowd, and we were like, we're the biggest band, we're the best band in the world, like, you're so happy to see us and whatever. And that was fun to us because there was 9 people in the crowd. Yeah. There was actually kind of a crisis when there was like, now there's 6,000 people in the crowd, and we go, we're the greatest, and they go and they agree. And it's like that's very different. Do we even like that dynamic? Like, what are we going to do? Because it was not built to be popular. It was built because it was awesome when you were unpopular. They were just like, because I feel like the most important thing you can be is unstoppable as a rock band. Like that's what that mic thing was about. Like you crash your head, you're bleeding, but you kind of just keep going and pretend like nothing, like nothing can affect you.
Yeah.
And I think that was the same thing. Like we don't care if it's like 2 people or 500 people. Like we're gonna, regardless, like we're gonna do our show because we're doing this for us. And I love when it feels like that. Like I've seen bands like an amazing like arena level show for 26 people, and I've seen bands that like complain when there's 50,000 people.
Yeah.
So it's all about like I think that for me that's like what separates the bands from the non-bands is if you have that thing like where it's all internal, like you're doing it for your own reasons.
Yeah.
I'm way off topic now.
No, it's
Where were
great.
we?
I love that. I think that's so interesting also because it's like
Constantly on a tangent. I've had a lot of coffee today to offset the jet lag.
we love the tangents. The tangents are what it's all about. But I do think that's like because that sort of underdog or like the jokey underdog spirit, or like what's the opposite of an underdog? Sort of if you are an underdog, but you're kind of professing to be an overdog.
I guess it's an overcat.
An overcat, exactly. Yeah, the overcat.
I think it's
mentality.
like I think the fun thing is that we do both. Like I mean, there's definitely something self-deprecating about it, but there's also self-aggrandizing, like glorifying ourselves or whatever you want to call it. Like it's definitely like part of both to not be afraid of like we did that terribly or whatever. But I think people kind of like with our band or with kind of anything really, I think people kind of pay money to see other people believe in themselves more than anything else. Like if I see like a band where I don't like the music, but I feel like they believe in themselves, I'm into it. Like I like that. Like like tell me what to like. Like I'm not like you're not here to serve me. Like I like that dynamic where it's like, you tell the band it's really into what they do, but you don't understand what the fuck they're on about. Like, I kind of like that.
Yeah.
We're always looking for validation from others in a way.
Yeah,
like,
and I think that's the job of the artist is to not do that. Like, this is fully formed. Like, look at this. Look what I made.
Go back to this lovely photo that you sent though. So I mean, I'm guessing this is Nicholas that's in the band and that's in the photo, right?
Exactly. It's my brother.
Yeah, I mean,
one-year-old brother. And I think that there's a stereo in the background, as I recall, and that's the stereo we heard AC/DC on.
Nice.
So it's like I guess I can't really remember the assignment, but it's something like a photo that like kind of defines your childhood, and it's like my brother who I make everything with, and there's a stereo system, and that was where we heard the music.
Nice.
So that was like, that photo encapsulates kind of, plus I don't have a lot of photos of myself as a kid, so it had to be that one, but that kind of encapsulates what I'm still doing, I guess. Like if I'm 6 in that photo and I had heard AC/DC, I'm probably not, I'm probably younger, but I heard AC/DC on that stereo, and since then I'm basically doing the same thing.
With the same man.
So like with the same person, which is like pretty rare. Like I feel like I've been in this band longer than most people I know have had like breakfast. Like I feel like I've weirdly like rock and roll is supposed to be like kind of a flash in the pan. Like you do it for a few years and then you burn out and you're like drug addicted and you go into rehab and then you become a doctor or whatever.
Yeah.
Like that's the usual trajectory. But for me, it's like this has been what I do my entire life now. And that's strange. To be a veteran rock and roller.
You're touring with somebody that's a family member. You haven't had an Oasis style fallout, as far as I'm aware. Like, has it always been a fairly harmonious?
Like many fallouts throughout the years. Yeah. We used to physically fight every day until we formed the band together. And then we started arguing about the music instead. So we're constantly arguing. And I think that like the only difference between us and the Oasis Brothers relationship is that they quit. It's kind of like you can have a really shit marriage and just stay married. Like it's fully possible. But I think that our relationship has changed. It used to be more like we wouldn't get along on a personal level like when we were kids, and now we do get along on a personal level, but we don't get along on a professional level a lot. So we've kind of just like come to the conclusion that we leave each other alone to do I mean, he's going to do his thing better than I'm going to do his thing. Like, kind of just leave each other alone to do what we do. And that seems to work pretty well. So we're like in the same band, but separately.
Yeah.
We've stopped trying to negotiate. Now it's just like either you decide or I decide. There's no middle ground. Because the middle ground is just torture.
Do you think, I mean, the fact that you're the front man, does that mean that you were always the more sort of outspoken or dominant brother?
Well, I am younger, though. No, I don't think that's necessarily true. I mean, for everyone outside the band, that seems to be the case. Like, I'm the guy everybody asks every question because I'm like the front man. And Nicholas can just like walk around in the wings and not be noticed so much. But I think everyone in the Hives thinks that that's amazing, that I have to do all the celebrity shit. And they can just kind of hang out at home and wait for that to be done and then go on tour. No one is like jealous of the attention of being a front man.
Yeah.
They're like, we get money and less attention. That's awesome.
Even though you were younger, were you the one that was kind of leading the pair of you as kids?
I think that like we were very different. I was like a kind of a misfit and he was very well adjusted. Like, he did everything you were supposed to do in the town we came from. He like was good at sports and, had friends and all that sort of thing. And I was always I guess I was kind of born a rebel, which sounds cool, but it kind of isn't because there's a big cost that comes with that. It's fucking annoying to never want to do anything anybody else wants to do. It makes you kind of lonely. And it's also like hard work to constantly be swimming up streams. But that was just what I was. And that's, that's how that worked. But he was always better at compromising with reality than I was. But then I guess it changed because I mean, I don't think he would have started a band without me. I had to like start the band and then he could join when it was like kind of ongoing, I guess. That is like Oasis. Yeah. True. Yeah, it's very simple. I just read that Oasis book because we were doing some signing and it was like an Oasis book for £5 or whatever. And I always I never listened much to their music, but I always thought they were really entertaining. So I kind of read a little bit of that, and it seemed there were a lot of things that I recognized, definitely.
Did you start playing guitar before your brother then?
No, well, maybe our dad played guitar, so there was always like a guitar around the house. But Nicholas was like good at it before me. He was like a shredder. He can play all that Yngwie Malmsteen, like neoclassical shred metal stuff.
So the thing that you decided to bring us in as your object was a Flying V guitar, the most rock and roll of all guitars, obviously. When did that come into your life?
Well, I remember distinctly, like I was on the floor of our living room playing with Star Wars toys. And our dad, who was like a jazz guitar player, walked in and he had some kind of like, I don't know, epiphany or like moment of insanity where he was like biking home from the hospital where he worked and bought a Flying V on the way. Like he had no plans to buy a Flying V, but he just like kind of biked into a music store, bought a Flying V in some kind of weird haze and then showed up in the living room like, look what I got. And it was like he was him with the Flying V. And that was like exciting, like, oh, our dad is he's gone mad. But that's kind of cool. And that guitar was like, I guess when I understood that guitar could be something else, but like country and jazz songs.
So who did he give it to? You or Nicholas? We
didn't give it to any. It was his guitar, but we would fiddle with it. Sitting down playing a Flying V is like the most annoying thing on earth. But he would do that,
Just sort of playing gentle.
Well, like playing gentle jazz on a Flying V.
Can you remember when it got passed into your? Was there a sort of a ceremonial passing of the V down to you at some point in your teenage years?
Not really. It was just at the house. You could pick it up and play it if you wanted to. It's like kind of like the way stuff in a house belongs to everyone in the family. But I mean, it was Dad's guitar, but we would play it. And I remember, I bought a guitar after that from. I just bought a guitar later.
Yeah,
still have it.
Were you learning AC/DC for the first songs you were learning? And did you get lessons? Did you have?
No, it was like punk stuff. No lessons. It was just misheard interpretations of completely autodidactic and like inept versions of like punk songs. But then I realized that because punk songs were so simple that it was easier to kind of make your own.
Yeah. At what point did that...
Easier than learning someone else's to make your own.
Yeah, I mean, did you write songs? Was that kind of you and your brother sitting at home trying to be in like a really early version of the Hives, or was that just you?
No, not really. It was way more complicated than that. Kind of can't go into it.
Okay. Intriguing. Yeah, I kind of love the idea because I mean, like, I think loads of people, their parents will have guitars or instruments knocking about the house. A flying V is obviously significantly less common, and maybe sort of, I mean, like holding that, like that sort of. That makes you automatically
feel...
It
felt like unlimited power.
Yeah.
But what I really wanted though was I wanted a dirt bike. I didn't want a guitar. But since Dad was like, he hated engines and was into music, like as soon as we gave him an inkling that we wanted to play music, you know, guitars and amps would just kind of show up. But I nagged about a dog and a dirt bike my whole life, and I got neither. So yeah, there was probably parenting involved in the Hives being created.
Yeah, I mean, it worked clearly, unless you now have a secret sort of side.
I mean, I could have been an amazing dirt bike rider.
Did your parents go to the early Hives shows? Would they come along and drive you? And
Mom drove us to a show in like the neighboring city and stuff. And well, they were supportive of the fact that we wanted to do it, but they were not. They just thought it was like a bad environment, like, and it was like those early punk shows was probably a terrible environment for young teenagers, like people trying to give you drugs instead of gas money for the show and stuff like that. But we navigated that pretty successfully.
What's it like like the Swedish sort of punk scene when you were growing up? Was there a lot of like little sort of basement venues and things, or like where would you be going when you're going to gigs?
Yeah, that sort of thing. But also like we realized that like Sweden is kind of too small for our very niche music, especially at the time it was very niche. So we started going into like mainland Europe, like because in Germany is so many more people that you can play like every day in Germany. Whereas in Sweden you can play like maybe you can play a weekend, and then you got say two more weekends without shows and like a week with shows. So we knew we needed to play a lot to get better. So we just immediately started kind of touring Europe.
That's a lot more because when you think like British bands or whatever are very lucky where you can go and hop on a train and go around the country, and there's X amount of cities where you can go and do these shows. Whereas like it's a bit more difficult if you've got to literally country hop around Europe.
Yeah, well, I mean, Sweden is like a tenth of the people, right, than the UK. So it's harder to get like momentum going. Like there's just and really long drives and few people. So it just kind of made more sense to go into like Germany and France and all that. And it was also like such a fun adventure to be like 18 in a band, like, you know, driving through Paris and stuff. It was really, because we didn't think that we wanted to be good, and no one we knew that were good, that we thought were good, was popular. So we thought that there was like an inverse relationship between good and popular. So we thought everything that was popular was shit, and everything that was good was not popular. So we figured we spent 3 years being the best band that we can possibly be, and then we're probably going to have to get jobs. Because we didn't think there was an option of like being both good and popular. So that was kind of another identity crisis where like, so now we're really popular. Does that mean we're still good, or did we just turn bad and now we're popular?
That's funny. Do you think there's something about growing up in the countryside that, I mean, there's lots of musicians, and, you know, you read about in autobiographies and in documentaries, a lot of like great musicians and great writers are from rural areas. Yeah. And I feel like there is some kind of, positive coalition. There's a thing there, you know, because I mean, I was born in the countryside, and it's fucking boring. So you have to make bike jumps, you make skate ramps, you start bands.
You have to create your own entertainment because there is nothing else. Like you can't enjoy other people's culture because there is nothing like. And I think that vacuum is definitely why. And it gave us time. Like there was 7 years of where we could just kind of fart about in the basement without having to like show it to anyone. So there was a long like period of like trial and error where we didn't have to be like in the public eye, and then, you know, to other people it seemed like we just kind of showed up fully formed. But there was definitely like making your own entertainment. Yeah, I think it's like what we did right, if we did anything right, is we spent a lot of time deciding what we are not, what we don't want to be, and a little bit of time deciding what we wanted to be, and then just hammering that, like rehearsing hundreds of hours and playing hundreds of shows, even though there were no venues. Like there were maybe like 2 or 3 places you could play in our hometown, and we played like 21. Like we rented the Scout Association's cabin and like put some beer in there and had a show. We played we broke into an empty mall and played there with all our friends and stuff. Like it was very like guerrilla. Like we play everywhere because we just like needed to. Because it was what we did, you know. But there was no one ever gave us an opportunity, or like there was no one to call it. Because like it's so funny when people like ask us like, "What advice do you have for young bands?" Like there's no advice that's gonna help. It's just like, how do you get someone to call you and give you a show? I'm like, you set up your own show. Like you can't wait.
Were you the scourge of the Swedish police at that time? Did you have a few run-ins if you were sort of doing guerrilla gigs everywhere?
I mean, this is going to sound really scary, and maybe it was, but they shut the police station because our town is tiny. They shut the police station. So everybody knew that there was 45 minutes at least for the police to drive from the neighboring town over to our town. So you could do anything for 45 minutes. Like Nicholas lived across the street from a toy store, and it got broken into all the time because everybody knew like, oh, somebody's going to call the police. And then the police is going to take 45 minutes to drive over here. So we got 45 minutes to just crash this place, steal all the PlayStations we want, and leave. And it'll be fine. So we could do a show over like 30 minutes before the police would show up. They just make sure you leave before that, and it'll be fine.
Yeah.
That's
exactly. Yeah. Thank God that your songs are short. That's like
we got in a lot of fights. We got in a lot of fights in Germany, though, over the shortness of our sets. Because they wanted punk rock, but for like 2 hours, because they thought they needed like a return on investment, like the real rational people.
Right.
And our thing was like, we don't want to play more than 20 minutes. Like that's our show is 20 minutes. Like get used to it. And people would be so mad. Like, didn't you like the show? Oh, I loved it. But that's why I'm mad that it wasn't longer.
Right.
I always thought that was weird. I mean, like, so do you want a worse, longer version?
Yeah. Also, God, imagine. I mean, like, I always kind of look at your shows and think that looks exhausting. Like, especially when you're in full suits in like, you know, some hot European country in the middle of summer. I don't know how you don't pass out.
Yeah.
Imagine having to do that for like, you know, a proper like Metallica length set. Like that would be sort of physically impossible, I would imagine. Like, have you ever? I mean, you must have come close to passing out.
You'd be surprised though how few people make that connection. They're like, why didn't you play for 2 hours? I'm like, did you see that? Were you at the same show I was at? I was basically like doing aerobics in a sauna while only breathing out for an hour.
I remember your Glastonbury set. Was it this year or last year? God, all time has sort of gone a bit fluctuating. Yeah, and that I think that was a very hot day, and I think there was like. You seemed slightly delirious. I think at some point halfway through that there was. I was also. It
was like early in the morning for me too. I just woken up and like because we did a show late the night before, got in the tour bus and drove, and then woke up and did the show immediately. So it was like this weirdest 24 hours. It was like you do a show, fall asleep, and then you wake up and do a show immediately. It was so bizarre, but I love that show. That was so much fun.
So we've been talking about all the punk rock things that affected you as a youth and the song that you've chosen. So neither me nor Giles, when we were talking about this, recognised the song that you've picked because I'm guessing maybe it was...
I can't remember what it was though.
You have picked KSMB with a song called 602, which I think... in Swedish, maybe it was called... I'm not going to try and pronounce it because it's going to be...
Yeah, 602.
Yes, that's it. Tell us about this band and this song. We are completely new to the world of KSMB.
Yeah, well, they were like Sweden's like second most popular original wave punk band. And it's like this there's like a lot of people in the band. There are 2 singers. And it really, when I was like 13, I heard it and I loved it immediately, kind of. And in the Hives, that was always our band. The biggest one is a band called Ebba Grön, who are like pretty much a straight Clash ripoff. They just kind of translated it and did it in Swedish, and people love them. And they're very good at that. But KSMB seemed more unique to us. It's maybe slightly less punk, but... And the song is kind of like it's like a Bob Dylan song that has like a million verses that are all kind of the same, just new lyrics. I love like James Bond, kind of like spy guitar. That's why I love the Dead Kennedys. Like I love that kind of guitar style.
Yeah.
And it kind of has that as well. And it had great lyrics about being in jail.
Okay. Classic. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really good. And about being addicted to drugs and stuff. And I kind of got it, even though I was way too young to be like addicted to drugs. But you know, if you're a good storyteller, you can make you feel what it feels like to be in a situation you've never been in. And I think the song does that really well. Unfortunately, it is in Sweden, so Swedish, so most of your listeners won't know what he's talking about. But maybe you can enjoy the music anyway.
Yeah, could you go see them? Were they active when you?
Well, they reunited. You couldn't when I became a fan, but then they reunited for like a couple of shows in 1992, and I saw them then, and I remember really liking it. I remember getting like a T-shirt signed by the band, and I was like, "Well, what do you want me to? Do you want me to write anything?" And I just go, "Well, just write something." And then he wrote, "Just write something." So that served me right.
Was it sort of a balance of Swedish acts and then sort of, you know, British and American and people singing in English?
It was Swedish first. You know, it was a couple of Swedish bands first, but then kind of immediately following that, it was also like the same thing to be into metal as punk at the time. Like in the town we come from, like everybody like Slayer and the Misfits.
Right.
So people have these leather jackets where they'd write both metal and punk bands, which I don't think was really the case in other places. Like you'd write like Metallica on your leather jacket and also like Misfits and all that. So I was into both, I guess, but the punk thing was more my thing. I was really into Dead Kennedys and Misfits and the Damned, kind of like horror theme punk, I guess. And the Cramps, like that was my thing.
Did you have a leather with all of the people Tipp-Ex'd on it?
Yeah. I didn't wear it a lot though, because we kind of immediately started like wearing suits, because it would seem like the most punk thing you could do if you're playing to an audience of all punks. Like the least punk you could do is like be conformative and play in a punk outfit, and the suit was such a provocation to these punks that it just seemed kind of perfect. Like they'd actually get like physically angry at the fact that we wore suits. It's such a symbol to them, like suit, enemy, you know.
Did you get in a scrap?
Yeah. We got in scraps in Germany from punk. Like, but usually the people that will fight you because you're wearing a suit are so drunk that they don't really pose a threat.
Right.
Would you ever sing in Swedish? Was there ever a time that you thought, okay, am I going to sing in Swedish or in English?
Yeah, I think we did for a minute. We had like some version of the Hives that was in Swedish, but kind of abandoned it pretty quickly.
Do you think that was part of the kind of rock star, you know, spotlight projection? Because the biggest rock stars are speaking in English. Was that almost an antagonistic thing to do?
Well, it's just like the language of rock, you know. It's like the vernacular and all that, and it's easier to make it sound cool than Swedish. So that was just kind of like, and also like we knew that if you play niche music, also limited it to only a Swedish audience seemed kind of dumb to us. Like if we sing in English, at least we can get like 5 fans in every country and we, you know, have something.
That was Howlin Pelle. We love him. We love all of our guests, of which there have been many so far on the first series of Before They Knew Better. We have had Killer Mike. We have had Bastille. We have had Felix White, Mae Muller, Olivia Dean, MXM Toon. So many. James Acaster. go back and listen to the previous episodes of Before They Knew Better with DIY Magazine. Give us a like and a subscribe, and then you can have the last few episodes of the series as we near the end of chapter 1, and they will come straight into your inbox on a Tuesday morning. The November issue of DIY Magazine is out now in print and online. It has King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard on the cover. We've also announced some new live dates with 2 of our favourite new bands, Hot Wax and Big Special. They're going to be heading out on the road for DIY's Now and Next Tour 2024 in April. Tickets are on sale now. So give DIY a read, give those tickets a purchase, give the podcast a like and subscribe, and then maybe just go for a nap. And we'll see you next Tuesday.